Hey guys, FilthyRobot here, bringing another guides, tips, and tricks video. This time we are talking about Norway, who I want to call Denmark every single time I look at them from far too much time spent in Civ 5. But here we are talking about Norway. Let's talk about their bonuses. Alright, the first of these is Thunderbolt of the North, allows coastal raiding for all naval melee units. Coastal raiding, I think even before we start with this, we need an immediate caveat for Norway. The problem with Norway, the biggest problem with Norway is that unless we see some major rebalancing go on, and we might actually see this between the NQ mod and the NQ and Hellblazer's map script, we might actually see some rebalancing to make continent or island maps in general something that's viable in multiplayer. The problem at the moment with continent and island-based multiplayer maps in general is you get runaways. You get people who have complete isolation and for whatever reason are really good starts, maybe lucky tribal villages or just really good terrain or just no neighbors to worry about so they don't have to build any military, are going to snowball in the early game. And there has to be ways for players to interact with people snowballing in a reasonable time frame so that they don't just run away with the entire game. So because of that, most multiplayer games just aren't going to be played on island and naval maps. It's just not what's going to happen with them because there's too much of a potential for the game to be decided without any interaction between the players, and that's just not what we want to see in multiplayer games. So from that perspective, that's the lens we're going to be using when we look at Norway's bonuses. However, I do want to try to take a moment when we're talking through these to look at these bonuses in the context of a different map type if we are playing a naval map. So let's start going through this right now. Thunderbolt of the North allows coastal raiding for all naval melee units. Coastal raiding is a surprisingly interesting ability. You can steal builders, you can steal settlers just by moving adjacent to them and clicking Coastal Raid. Coastal Raid does have costs associated with it. I believe the movement cost associated with it is the same as pillaging. I think it's 3 movement to do that, although I'm not entirely sure about that. It might only be 2, but I think it is 3 to do that. So it's a little bit hard to do that, and players you might surprise players by reminding them, oh, I'm Norway. The first time you do that, they might be surprised, but they're probably not going to be surprised the second or third time you do that, and no one is going to be cool with you stealing their units. So you're going to piss off players doing that. This is not a free unit after all. It's going to be a unit that probably throws you into some war when that happens. Additionally, there aren't too many melee naval units, especially early. The early ones can't cross deep water. That's the Viking longship, which is a unique special ability. So that's not in of itself, it is a unique unit rather. So it's not in of itself that bad. So you will see some Viking longships out and about, especially on a naval map, probably not on a Pangea map, but especially on a naval map. And Viking longships with this coastal raiding can actually interact with tribal villages, which is awesome, which means that they can, despite not being on land, they can use this coastal raiding ability to interact with that village and get the bonus for your civ. So there are some cool parts of this, but it's going to be highly situational, and probably in the vast majority of Pangea maps, you're not going to see almost no use for this whatsoever. All right, moving on. I don't know how to say this. Nar, maybe. Units gain the ability to enter ocean tiles after researching the shipbuilding technology. Naval melee units heal in neutral territory, and units ignore additional movement costs from embarking and disembarking. Shipbuilding is really quite early. Shipbuilding is here, which could technically be done in 2 techs, although probably is not going to be that way. And normal civilizations gain the ability to enter deep water here at cartography. So that's a pretty big difference in terms of the timing. You're going to get this one in the classical era, and most people aren't going to be able to enter deep water till the Renaissance era. Unfortunately, what this feels like to me is probably on naval maps, people are going to be like, no, you can't play Norway because Norway has this ability to settle other continents much faster than anybody else does, so that's not cool. We'll probably ban it on naval maps, and on Pangea maps, no one's going to be caring one way or the other. It may have some situationally cool things versus play versus the AI, where you're going to want to pick a civ that just really suits the map you're doing, where you're trying to have some fun with doing something different, and that may be useful there. Certainly, these abilities are good. Naval units being able to heal in neutral territory is quite nice. That has always been one of the problems with ships in Civ, is that when you're far from home, engaging in war or raiding, you can't do a lot to get your health back up because you don't have home ports to heal in. So the ability to heal outside of your own territory and in neutral territory is really nice, especially for the early game units like the longship, which is going to be going around looking for tribal huts to coastally raid. So that's pretty good. Naval units, and then units ignore additional movement costs when embarking and disembarking. That's really good for moving armies across the water. But again, moving armies across the water is very, very situationally useful. Most times it isn't useful. So maybe this might help a little bit for settling some cities, or possibly for, again, launching some coastal attacks. But probably that's not going to occur almost ever in Pangea, and even then rarely in naval games unless you're playing against the AI. So these bonuses feel pretty weak as a whole. Let's talk about their unique units. The first of these is the Viking Longship. The Viking Longship. It's a stronger galley, so it's an early unit, melee unit, 30 combat strength. I think the galley is 28 or 27. 25, excuse me. So it is quite a bit stronger than the initial galley. Same movement points. I think the cost was the same, 65 compared to 65. The upkeep's the same, 1 compared to 1. So there's not a lot of bonuses. It's just a very slightly better galley. The problem is the galley isn't very useful in the early game. It can only enter non-deep water. You might be putting 1 or 2 of those out on a naval map to go meet some city-states and see where your continent connects to another continent. And maybe you'll get 1 or 2 goody huts out of that, or a couple more goody huts, but in all likelihood, you're not going to actually see all that much use out of using the galleys at all. So, okay, a better galley, yeah, so be it. Kind of mediocre at best. Their next unit is the Berserker. This is a unique land melee unit. It has some cool abilities. Let's see if we can go find it. It arrives at the same time as Pikemen. Military Tactics is a tech for that. Military Tactics is a pretty rarely utilized tech path. It just doesn't seem that useful. We'll see. Maybe Pikemen will turn out to be a very good counter to Horsemen. The problem is they come so much later. Maybe they'll be an okay counter to Knights. Maybe, again, I have my doubts about that. Just the sheer mobility of the horse unit seems so strong right now. So maybe this tech will be a little bit more common than it might otherwise be. And the Berserker does remove some of the problems that I have with melee units, which is they can't do anything because they're not fast enough. So the Berserker itself, it's a unique medieval unit. I told you what tech it's at already. It gains 4 movement if this unit starts in enemy territory, and it gains 7 combat strength when attacking and loses 7 combat strength when defending, and it has base 40 melee strength. So what is that? 20% increase on combat when attacking, basically, and minus 20% combat roughly minus 20% combat strength when defending. I don't like negative bonus units. Melee units are going to, by their very nature, spend a lot of time defending. They're slow. Now the Viking Berserker is a little bit faster. 4 movement point makes him as fast as horses in enemy territory, so long as he starts in enemy territory. But think about how you attack into enemy territory. Your first turn that you declare war, you move into their territory. They probably don't have units right on the border because you're declaring some sort of war that they're not expecting. Okay, so you move in, then all of their ranged units get a turn to shoot you. All of their archers and crossbows and city stuff and all that's going to get a turn to shoot you before you get a turn to go again. You're going to take some serious damage doing this, but this does have my major problem with melee units removed. And my major problem with melee units is they're too slow to do anything. The way that the terrain now impacts movement means it is harder for melee units to ever get attacks off whatsoever, which makes them a lot less useful. So this does circumvent that a little bit. This unit feels very situational and not that strong even in the situation it's at. 40 melee combat strength really isn't all that much. The Pikeman, I believe, is actually stronger. Yeah, Pikeman comes in at 41. The Knight is at 48. The crossbow is at 40 range combat strength. 41 doesn't sound, or 40 doesn't sound all that strong to begin with. Yeah, if you want to roleplay a Viking Berserker, there you go. There's your unit of choice to do it. But fuck, it doesn't seem that great to me. All right, let's talk about their last bonus. The Stave Church, another fairly weak unique ability or unique building in this case. This is a temple replacement, if I recall correctly. Let's just double check to make sure, but I'm pretty sure. Stave Church, there it is. Yes. Replaces the temple. Gives you 4 faith, 1 citizen slot, 1 great prophet point, and 1 relic slot. The temple itself does exactly those same bonuses. So the only thing, and the cost in the temple is 105, the cost in the Stave Church is 105. The only thing the Stave Church does for you is it gives you, it gives a holy site that it's built in an additional standard adjacency bonus from woods. So normally with a holy site, you get 1 faith for every 2 woods, I believe. Let's just double check in case that is not true. Yeah, right there. 1 faith from every 2 adjacent wood tiles, so that if you build the Stave Church in your holy site, you're going to get 2 faith from every 2 woods, or 1 faith from every 1 woods, as opposed to 1 faith for every 2 woods. The problem with that is a lot of things. First of all, that amount of faith is really not that much, especially by the time you're building temples, and the likelihood of having lots of adjacent forests is pretty low. Temples are quite late in the tech tree. It's not even a tech building, it's a Civ6 tree building. But temples are here, and that's not all that late in of itself, but you don't tend to want to rush building temples. The bonuses they give you aren't all that much. Again, perhaps in some sort of faith-based strategy, you may wish to get those up very early to get your faith rolling, so for faith purchasing later, and that might be a little bit stronger. But even in that strategy, the adjacency tied to woods is just not that big of an issue. It's just not going to be occurring with enough frequency or enough of those woods tiles to be realistic, especially with how valuable woods tiles are right now for chopping. You get huge bonuses from chopping out your resources, particularly woods and jungle. There's probably not going to be a lot of woods around to even get this bonus going, and the bonus itself isn't that good to begin with. So what does this all mean? Taken together, what do we think about the combination of Norway's bonuses? Weak melee unit, slightly stronger, very situational melee naval unit, a quite bad, in my opinion, unique building, and 2 bonuses that are only good on coastal maps or maps where you're going to be engaging with the coast. And there's another hidden downside of this, which is that I think they have a coastal bias. We don't know this for sure yet, but I find that Norway spawns a lot on the coast in my games, and coast is just weaker than fresh water in general. Not only are you getting less housing, but that means that half of your territory or a quarter of your territory is land you can't move into. If you spawn in the middle of something, you have terrain out to all your directions that you can expand. You can go looking for slots to put down more cities. If you spawn up against the coast, not only do you have that housing reduction, you also run into the fact that you may just not be able to get any land. There might be shit in your way for the directions that you're able to move towards. And then additionally, you run into issues with things like aqueducts and stuff like this, because you're not necessarily going to have a mountain there, and with no fresh water, you can't do that. This combination of things makes this maybe decent on naval maps, but naval maps are going to be more rare and pretty crap everywhere else. My kind of take-home message from Norway is it's not a very good Civ. And I don't think they're going to be very popular or very powerful to play. Anyways, guys, hopefully you've enjoyed this review. We're going to be talking about all of the civilizations in Civilization 6 at some point. If you enjoyed the videos, please hit the follow button. Please come subscribe to the channel and come check out the rest of my content. Anyways, FilthyRobot out. I'll see you guys soon. Hope you enjoyed the content.